Mary Balog, Edina, Minnesota. Hello. I have a question for the candidates. I'd like to know how they are going, what they think about storing nuclear waste in Minnesota.
And this time we'll start with Mr. Entenza.
Well, this is why I don't see nuclear energy as the future of the state, because the reality is the federal government promised us back in the 1950s that they would find a long-term place to store nuclear waste, which of course is radioactive for hundreds of thousands of years. And they haven't done that. No one has identified a safe place to do it. But beyond that, nuclear power is based on uranium. We don't own uranium. We don't make any money off of uranium. Even if you don't care about any of the environmental issues, why should we say that we're going to put our energy future on a source of energy where we're paying somebody else for energy? We should be paying ourselves. And that's why we should be focusing on wind and on geothermal and on solar and on the next generation of liquid-based biomass fuels. And expanding nuclear energy not only doesn't help us because it would take so many years to do, but we don't have the answers to those key questions. So that's why I believe that we should start paying ourselves for energy and be focused about it. We should be putting solar on the roofs of our public buildings. We should be working with the private sector so that we get wind energy all over the state manufacturing here. And contrary to Tom's assertion that this is all about government, what this is about we make a decision about the kind of energy that we want. It is our money. Every month when you write your utility bill now, it is leaving the state, paying other people. We can make that decision to pay ourselves, and the private sector will respond. We don't need to raise taxes to do it. We just need to make a decision about what we want to do, and that's the smart way to rebuild the state and help our environment.
Mr. Dayton.
We are storing nuclear waste in Minnesota. We're storing it at what they call temporary caskets down on a floodplain in the Mississippi River by the Prairie Island nuclear plants. Whether people know it or not, nuclear waste is transported periodically from the nuclear plant up in Monticello by rail, a line that goes right through downtown Minneapolis and St. Paul. Fortunately, has not had any kind of environmental catastrophe. I voted against that project when I was on the Environmental Quality Board, but that's what happens. And there's nowhere for that waste to go, not because the federal government, who really is, again, we the people, hasn't identified a site. The engineers of the U.S. Department of Energy, after 20 years of careful analysis, identified a site, Yucca Mountain, and the Republican senator and the Democratic senator joined together along with about 99.9% of the people in Nevada and said, over our dead bodies, is the nation's nuclear waste going to come into our state? And so it's the classic NIMBY and those who are advocates of nuclear power and say that, it's fine except for this, huge problem that is unsolvable yet in this country because nobody wants it, understandably, in their backyard, are just talking about adding more nuclear waste and more nuclear waste with no responsible outcome, a resolution to that problem in sight. And it would be highly irresponsible to subject future generations for thousands of years to come to our irresponsible inability to develop alternative energies that are going to require them to inherit that waste with no resolution at all.
Mr. Horner.
Well, the reality is that we have a nuclear waste storage problem already. I mean, we can talk all we want about moving to greener forms of energy, and we should, and that's a responsible thing to do. But the fact is, at Prairie Island and Monticello, we have storage problems that we have to figure out. And the longer we delay bringing our best minds to that problem, the bigger the problem is going to be. I mean, it's great to say, don't worry, or to blame the feds to say they didn't deliver on their promises for Yucca Mountain, but they didn't. So we have to figure it out, and we have the brain power to do it. I don't know what the answers are, but we can't ignore it. I also think that we have to be clear, and back to Matt's point, that when we subsidize, when we create tax incentives, there is a cost to that, and we have to be smart about that. We should do it, but we ought to get a return. When we create incentives and standards to generate so much energy from wind power, that's terrific. But it's really terrific if you happen to be a customer of utilities that benefit from wind power. Not so terrific if you're paying that subsidy and you happen to live in War Road where you get no benefit from it, you just pay the cost. Similarly on biomass. It's great if you happen to be in agriculture, not so great if you happen to be a taxpayer paying for those kinds of subsidies. We can't do everything. We have to be smart, we have to set priorities, and we have to keep investing in innovation and reform.
Mr. Hahn?
I think the question dealt with how do we stand on nuclear waste, and it is a concern. As much as I want to lift the moratorium and at least explore the possibility of constructing at least one, maybe two new nuclear power plants here in the state, the waste is one of the primary issues we always have to be concerned about. I don't deny that we have to be concerned about it, but I think if I understand correctly, and one of you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that the fourth generation of nuclear power plants now in operation or in the process of being built throughout the world actually take the waste and reuse that. So there's less waste that's generated, or not so much generated, but it goes back into creating new energy within the plant. And I think we have to keep our minds open because it's clean, it's safe, we've proven it's safe. We haven't seen a 3 Mile Island incident here in the state. And again, we're dealing with issues that were brought up 30 years ago when the technology, computer and otherwise, was not as strong as it is today. So to just unequivocally shut out any discussion about lifting the moratorium or considering nuclear energy and expansion of it in the future, I think is just wrong. And as governor, I'd be open to discussions on both sides.